Ladies and gentlemen, Maitreya lifestyle is not merely the way we live, it is the silent expression of who we are becoming. Most people believe lifestyle is built from habits, routines, or external success. They chase productivity, appearance, and approval, believing that changing the outer world will transform the inner one. But psychology teaches us something deeper. Your lifestyle is a mirror of your inner psyche. Every choice you make, how you wake up, how you speak, what you consume, what you avoid, reveals a conversation happening within your unconscious mind. We live in a world that encourages imitation. Society hands us ready-made identities. Work harder, look better, own more, compare constantly. Yet when a person lives only according to expectations, they slowly lose connection with their authentic self. And this disconnection creates anxiety, emptiness, and restlessness. Carl Jung believed that true transformation begins when a person turns inward, not to escape life, but to understand it. Your lifestyle should not be a performance, it should be an integration. Inside each of us lives both light and shadow, discipline and laziness, courage and fear, ambition and doubt. Many people try to destroy their weaknesses, but growth comes not from rejection, but from awareness. When you understand your shadow, your habits stop being unconscious reactions and become conscious choices. A meaningful lifestyle emerges when your daily actions align with your deeper values. Ask yourself, are you living intentionally or merely repeating patterns inherited from others? Unconscious shapes your routines more than motivation ever will. If you constantly sabotage your goals, it is not because you lack strength. It is because a hidden part of you has not yet been heard of you, has not yet been heard. When you listen to yourself honestly, your lifestyle begins to change naturally. You wake not because you must, but because your life has meaning. You work not only for survival, but for expression. You rest without guilt because you understand balance. True lifestyle transformation is not sudden. It is psychological evolution. It happens when you replace comparison with self-awareness, when you stop running from discomfort and start learning from it, when your outer life becomes an honest reflection of your inner truth. Individuation, the process Jung described, is the art of becoming whole, and lifestyle is its daily practice. Every small action is symbolic. The way you organize your space reflects your mind. The people you surround yourself with shape your identity. The thoughts you repeat become your destiny. So do not ask, how can I live like others? Ask instead, who am I becoming through the way I live? Because a powerful lifestyle is not loud, it is aligned, it is conscious, it is authentic. And when your life aligns with your true self, peace replaces confusion, purpose replaces pressure, and growth becomes inevitable. It is something you discover day by day as you become who you truly are. Lifestyle is far more than a collection of routines, appearances, or productivity systems. It is a living expression of the psychological world within you. The way you organize your day, the choices you repeat, the environments you feel comfortable in, and even the habits you struggle to change are shaped not only by discipline or motivation, but by deeper inner patterns formed through experiences, beliefs, fears, and desires. What looks like a simple habit on the outside is often the visible result of an invisible emotional process. A person who constantly seeks busyness may not simply love productivity. They may be unconsciously avoiding silence because silence forces them to confront unresolved thoughts. Someone who procrastinates may not lack ambition, but may carry an inner fear of judgment or failure rooted deep in their psyche. Even the way we rest, socialize, or pursue success reflects how safe or insecure we feel within ourselves. Lifestyle, therefore, becomes a psychological language, a silent conversation between the conscious mind and the unconscious self. Many people attempt to change their lives by forcing external discipline alone, new schedules, strict routines, or sudden transformations. Yet these changes rarely last because the inner foundation remains untouched. When the inner world is chaotic, the outer lifestyle eventually mirrors that chaos. True and lasting change occurs only when a person understands why they live the way they do, when habits are no longer unconscious reactions, but conscious expressions of self-awareness. Your environment, relationships, and daily decisions gradually shape your identity, but they are also chosen according to what feels psychologically familiar. We often recreate emotional patterns we already know, even when they limit us, because the psyche seeks familiarity before growth. Recognizing this truth allows a person to stop blaming circumstances and begin exploring the deeper motivations guiding their behavior. When inner clarity develops, lifestyle begins to transform naturally rather than through force. Healthy routines arise not from pressure, but from alignment. Rest becomes restorative instead of guilty, work becomes meaningful instead of exhausting, and discipline feels like self-respect rather than punishment. In this way, lifestyle stops being a performance for the outside world and becomes an authentic reflection of inner balance. Ultimately, the life you live each day reveals who you believe you are at the deepest level. Change your understanding of yourself, and your lifestyle will slowly reshape itself, not as an act of effort alone, but as a natural expression of psychological growth and self-integration. From the moment people enter society, they are quietly taught how to live by observing others rather than discovering themselves. Family expectations, cultural standards, social media trends, and collective ideas of success begin shaping identity long before true self-awareness develops. Without realizing it, many individuals learn to measure their worth by comparison, comparing achievements, appearances, lifestyles, and even personal dreams against what seems socially accepted or admired. Over time, imitation becomes comfortable because it offers approval, belonging, and safety from rejection. Yet, imitation carries a hidden cost. When a person constantly models their life after others, they slowly disconnect from their own inner voice. Decisions are no longer guided by genuine desire, but by external validation. Careers are chosen because they appear respectable, habits are adopted because they are popular, and goals are pursued because they promise recognition rather than meaning. On the surface, life may look successful, but internally there is often confusion, restlessness, or an unexplainable emptiness, the psyche signaling that something authentic has been neglected. Human beings naturally seek acceptance, and there is nothing wrong with learning from others. The problem arises when imitation replaces self-discovery. Instead of asking, "What truly fulfills me?" many people ask, "What will make me admired?" This subtle shift leads to living behind a psychological mask, a persona created to meet expectations rather than express individuality. The longer this mask is worn, the harder it becomes to recognize one's true preferences, passions, and values. Authenticity requires courage, because it often means stepping away from familiar patterns and facing uncertainty. It asks a person to listen inwardly, to acknowledge desires that may not fit societal norms, and to accept parts of themselves that were previously suppressed. This process can feel uncomfortable, even lonely at times, because authenticity does not guarantee universal approval. However, it brings something far more valuable: inner coherence and psychological peace. When people begin to live authentically, their lifestyle stops being an imitation of success and becomes an expression of identity. Choices gain clarity, relationships become more genuine, and effort feels meaningful rather than forced. Energy once spent maintaining appearances is redirected toward growth and creativity. Authentic living doesn't mean rejecting the world, it means participating in it without losing oneself. Ultimately, imitation may provide temporary belonging, but authenticity creates lasting fulfillment. A life shaped by others' expectations will always feel borrowed, while a life shaped by self-understanding carries a quiet confidence. The certainty that one is living not as a copy, but as a unique and integrated human being. Meaningful change does not begin with action. It begins with understanding. Many people attempt to transform their lives by forcing new habits, setting ambitious goals, or adopting strict discipline, yet they often return to old patterns because the deeper causes of their behavior remain unseen. Without self-awareness, change becomes temporary effort rather than lasting transformation. A person may alter routines for a while, but the unconscious mind quietly pulls them back toward familiar ways of living. Self-awareness is the ability to observe oneself honestly, to recognize thoughts, emotions, motivations, and reactions without denial or judgment. It requires the courage to ask difficult questions. Why do I react this way? What am I truly seeking? What fear or belief lies beneath my choices? When individuals begin to examine their inner world, they discover that many behaviors are not random, but rooted in past experiences, hidden insecurities, or unmet psychological needs. Often, people try to change what is visible while ignoring what is hidden. Someone may attempt to become more disciplined without understanding their fear of failure, or pursue constant productivity without recognizing an inner need for validation. In such cases, effort feels exhausting because it fights against unresolved inner conflicts. Self-awareness dissolves this struggle by bringing unconscious patterns into consciousness, allowing choice to replace automatic reaction. Through awareness, a person learns to distinguish between authentic desires and conditioned expectations. They begin to notice how emotions influence decisions, how certain environments trigger old habits, and how internal narratives shape confidence or self-doubt. This clarity creates freedom. Instead of being controlled by impulses or fears, individuals gain the ability to respond intentionally. Meaningful change becomes possible because awareness transforms resistance into insight. When you understand the emotional purpose behind a habit, you can address the need beneath it rather than merely suppress the behavior. Growth then feels natural rather than forced. Discipline becomes self-respect. Boundaries become acts of self-understanding, and progress becomes sustainable because it aligns with inner truth. Self-awareness also fosters compassion toward oneself. Rather than viewing weaknesses as failures, a person begins to see them as signals pointing toward areas needing attention and integration. This shift reduces inner conflict and creates psychological balance, making change less about self-correction and more about self-integration. Ultimately, lasting transformation happens when the inner world evolves. Actions change because perception changes, lifestyle changes because identity changes. Self-awareness acts as the foundation upon which all meaningful growth is built, turning change from a struggle against oneself into a conscious journey toward becoming whole. Much of what people call choice in daily life is, in reality, guided by forces operating beneath conscious awareness. The unconscious mind quietly influences thoughts, emotions, and behaviors long before the rational mind believes it has made a decision. From the moment a person wakes up to the way they respond to stress, relationships, or challenges, countless actions are shaped by patterns formed through past experiences, emotional memories, and deeply rooted beliefs stored outside conscious attention. Daily routines often feel automatic because they are. The brain seeks efficiency, and the unconscious preserves familiar behaviors as psychological shortcuts. A person may reach for their phone immediately, upon waking avoid certain responsibilities, or repeat the same emotional reactions in conversation, without fully understanding why. These patterns are not random habits. They are expressions of internal conditioning developed over years of learning what feels safe, rewarding, or protective. For example, someone who experienced criticism earlier in life may unconsciously avoid situations where they might be judged, even if those situations offer growth. Another person may overwork not simply out of ambition, but from an unconscious need to feel worthy or secure. Emotional reactions, irritation, anxiety, withdrawal, or even excessive perfectionism often arise before conscious reasoning has time to intervene. The unconscious mind acts first. Awareness usually arrives afterward to justify the behavior, Because these influences operate silently, people frequently misunderstand their own struggles. They may blame laziness, lack of motivation, or external circumstances, when in reality their unconscious mind is attempting to protect them from perceived emotional threats. The psyche prefers familiarity over change, even when familiar patterns limit personal development. This is why breaking routines can feel uncomfortable or even threatening. The unconscious interprets change as uncertainty. Understanding this process changes how transformation is approached. Instead of fighting behavior through sheer willpower, individuals begin to observe the emotional meaning behind the actions. When awareness is directed inward, patterns that once seemed uncontrollable start to reveal their origins. A habit becomes understandable, and once understood, it becomes flexible. It decams. As consciousness expands, routines gradually shift from automatic repetition to intentional living. A person begins to pause before reacting, to notice emotional triggers, and to choose responses rather than replaying old scripts. Over time, new behaviors become integrated, not because they were forced, but because the unconscious itself has adapted to new understanding. In this way, daily life becomes a dialogue between the conscious and unconscious mind. When ignored, the unconscious silently governs behavior. When acknowledged, it becomes a powerful ally in growth. True change occurs not when people attempt to overpower their habits, but when they learn to understand the hidden psychological forces shaping them, allowing awareness to transform routine into conscious choice. Human beings often divide themselves into what they consider acceptable and unacceptable traits. Qualities that fit social expectations, kindness, confidence, discipline, are embraced and shown openly, while impulses such as anger, jealousy, fear, desire, or insecurity are pushed away and hidden. These rejected aspects form what psychology calls the shadow, the parts of the personality that remain unconscious. As they feel uncomfortable or socially undesirable, yet ignoring these aspects does not eliminate them. It simply drives them deeper into the psyche, where they continue to influence behavior indirectly. When the shadow is denied, it often expresses itself through unhealthy patterns. A person who refuses to acknowledge anger may become passive-aggressive or emotionally distant. Someone who suppresses ambition may feel resentment toward others' success. Individuals who deny vulnerability may struggle with intimacy or overcompensate through control and perfectionism. The shadow does not disappear through rejection. Instead, it finds subtle ways to shape decisions, relationships, and daily habits without conscious awareness. Accepting the shadow does not mean acting on every impulse or justifying destructive behavior. Rather, it means recognizing these inner forces honestly and understanding their psychological purpose. Anger, for example, may signal violated boundaries. Fear may reveal areas needing growth or protection. Even traits we judge harshly often carry hidden energy that, when understood, can be redirected constructively. Awareness transforms these forces from unconscious drivers into sources of insight. As individuals begin to accept their shadow, they develop greater emotional balance. Instead of reacting impulsively or suppressing feelings until they erupt, they learn to pause, reflect, and respond consciously. Decisions become healthier because they are no longer driven by denial or inner conflict. Relationships improve as projection decreases. People stop blaming others for qualities they have not yet recognized within themselves. Shadow acceptance also strengthens personal responsibility. When individuals acknowledge both their strengths and flaws, they stop viewing themselves as either entirely good or entirely flawed. This psychological integration reduces guilt and shame, replacing them with self-understanding. From this place, choices become more realistic and grounded. A person sets boundaries without excessive aggression, pursues goals without unhealthy obsession, and allows rest without feeling weak. Healthier life choices emerge naturally because inner energy is no longer spent resisting parts of oneself. Instead of living in constant internal conflict, a person experiences alignment. habits shift toward balance, emotional reactions become less extreme, and long-term decisions reflect genuine self-knowledge rather than unconscious compensation. Ultimately, accepting the shadow leads to wholeness. It allows individuals to live with authenticity rather than fragmentation, recognizing that growth does not come from becoming perfect, but from becoming complete. When the hidden parts of the psyche are brought into awareness, if choices begin to reflect wisdom rather than avoidance, creating a lifestyle rooted in psychological harmony and conscious living. Many people believe that changing their lifestyle requires external adjustments, a new environment, a stricter schedule, better opportunities, or improved circumstances. They focus on altering what can be seen, waking earlier, working harder, buying new tools for productivity, or adopting routines they observe in successful individuals. While these changes may create temporary momentum, they often fail to produce lasting transformation because they attempt to reshape life from the outside, while the inner patterns remain unchanged. True lifestyle transformation begins within the psychological world of beliefs, perceptions, and emotional understanding. The way a person lives externally is a reflection of how they experience themselves internally. If someone feels unworthy, they may unconsciously sabotage opportunities regardless of how perfect their routine appears. If fear dominates the inner world, even the most carefully planned lifestyle will eventually collapse under stress or uncertainty. External structure cannot sustain change when inner resistance remains unresolved. The inner world shapes motivation, energy, and consistency. When actions are disconnected from personal meaning, discipline feels exhausting and temporary. People may force themselves into habits that do not align with their values, only to abandon them when initial enthusiasm fades. This is not failure, it is the psyche resisting a life that does not feel authentic. Lasting change happens when individuals understand why they want transformation and what emotional needs lie beneath their goals. Inner transformation requires self-reflection, recognizing limiting beliefs, confronting fears, and questioning inherited definitions of success. Often, individuals discover that their lifestyle struggles are not caused by laziness or lack of willpower, but by unresolved inner conflicts. A person may crave rest but fear appearing unproductive, or desire change while clinging to familiarity for psychological safety. Bringing these conflicts into awareness reduces internal tension and allows growth to occur naturally. As inner clarity develops, external behavior begins to shift almost effortlessly. Habits become sustainable because they are supported by genuine intention rather than pressure. Healthy routines arise as expressions of self-respect, not punishment. Relationships evolve because communication becomes more honest. Even the environment gradually changes as choices begin reflecting inner alignment. Transformation from within also creates resilience. External circumstances indemnified, individuals adapt without losing direction. Their lifestyle is no longer dependent on motivation alone, but grounded in identity and purpose. Actions become consistent because they reflect who the person is becoming rather than what they are trying to imitate. Ultimately, lifestyle transformation is not about constructing a new life on top of an old self. It is about allowing inner growth to reshape outer reality. When thoughts become clearer, emotions more balanced, and values more conscious, daily living naturally reorganizes itself. The outer world follows the inner shift, proving that lasting change is not imposed from outside forces, but emerges from psychological evolution within. Inner peace does not arise simply from comfort, success, or the absence of problems. It emerges when a person's actions reflect what they truly believe and value at their core. Many individuals experience tension not because life is difficult, but because there is a silent conflict between what they feel is meaningful and how they actually live each day. When values remain unexpressed in behavior, the psyche experiences fragmentation, a subtle but persistent sense that something is out of balance. People often know deep within themselves what matters most: honesty, growth, creativity, connection, purpose, or compassion. Yet external pressures, fear of judgment, or the desire for approval can lay. Add them to act in ways that contradict these inner truths. A person who values authenticity may constantly pretend to meet expectations. Someone who values health may repeatedly neglect rest or well-being. Over time, this gap between belief and behavior creates emotional exhaustion, guilt, or restlessness, even when outward life appears successful. This inner conflict occurs because the mind seeks coherence. Human beings are psychologically wired to function best when thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction. When actions contradict values, energy is consumed maintaining internal justification and denial. A person may rationalize choices or distract themselves to avoid discomfort, but the unconscious continues to signal misalignment through stress, dissatisfaction, or loss of motivation. Alignment begins with clarity. Individuals must first understand what they genuinely value rather than what they have been taught to value. This requires honest reflection, separating personal meaning from societal expectations. Once values become clear, daily actions gradually transform from obligations into expressions of identity. Discipline becomes easier because behavior feels purposeful rather than forced. When actions align with values, decisions simplify. There is less internal debate and fewer feelings of regret because choices are guided by a stable inner compass. Relationships become more authentic because communication reflects sincerity instead of performance. Work gains meaning because effort connects to deeper purpose rather than external validation alone. Even challenges feel different, as struggles endured for meaningful reasons create fulfillment instead of resentment. Inner peace grows from this consistency between inner belief and outward behavior. It is not a passive calm, but a quiet confidence, the sense that one is living truthfully. Mistakes still occur, and difficulties remain part of life, yet they no longer create deep psychological conflict because the individual feels aligned with their own direction. Ultimately, peace is not something discovered outside oneself. It is cultivated through integrity between who you are and how you live. When values guide actions consistently, life feels less like a performance and more like an authentic expression of the self, allowing the mind to rest in harmony rather than struggle against its own contradictions. The seemingly ordinary choices we make each day, the way we wake up, the words we speak, the habits we repeat, and even the environments we inhabit, are rarely random. They are subtle reflections of deeper psychological patterns that have been quietly forming throughout our lives. Each small action carries meaning because it emerges from an intricate network of beliefs, experiences, fears, and desires stored within the unconscious mind. What may appear as a trivial routine is often a scene-level expression of who we are at a deeper, often unseen level. For instance, the way someone organizes their personal space can reveal their inner state. A cluttered desk or chaotic room may reflect internal confusion or indecision, while a carefully curated environment might indicate a desire for control, stability, or clarity. Similarly, the words a person chooses in conversation, the gestures they make unconsciously, or even the way they respond to minor stressors reveal patterns of thought and emotion rooted in early experiences or deeply held beliefs. Small daily actions also expose the interplay between shadow and conscious self. A tendency to procrastinate may symbolize a fear of failure or rejection, while repeated avoidance of confrontation may indicate unresolved anxiety or suppressed anger. Even habits like overworking, excessive social media scrolling, or constant multitasking carry psychological significance, pointing to unmet needs, unconscious coping strategies, or emotional voids that the conscious mind has not yet addressed. The cumulative effect of these small actions is profound. They do not simply shape the day, they shape identity. Over time, repeated behaviors create patterns that either reinforce inner conflicts or support personal growth, depending on the degree of awareness applied. When individuals remain unconscious of these patterns, life may feel repetitive, frustrating, or misaligned. Conversely, when one observes these actions with mindfulness, They become windows into the psyche, clues that reveal hidden motivations, unresolved conflicts, and untapped potential. Awareness of the symbolism embedded in daily behavior allows a person to make conscious choices rather than being led by automatic reactions. A simple shift, choosing to respond instead of react, to pause instead of rush, to observe instead of ignore, transforms ordinary routines into acts of self-understanding. By attending to these seemingly minor behaviors, a person can gradually unravel the threads of unconscious influence and redirect their energy toward intentional living. Ultimately, small daily actions are the language of the inner self. They encode patterns that speak louder than words, silently revealing who we are, what we fear, and what we aspire to become. By interpreting and understanding these symbols, we gain insight into the psyche and create the opportunity to live with greater alignment, authenticity, and psychological harmony. Individuation, the process of becoming a whole and integrated self, is not an abstract concept confined to introspective thought. It is a journey expressed through conscious living. It unfolds not in isolation from daily experience, but precisely within it, through the choices, behaviors, and reflections that shape each moment. Every act of attention, every decision to face discomfort rather than avoid it, and every effort to understand oneself contributes to the emergence of a fully realized individual. To live consciously means to observe one's thoughts, emotions, and impulses without judgment, to notice when habitual patterns or unconscious drives shape behavior, and to respond deliberately rather than react automatically. In this awareness, the shadow, the hidden, disowned parts of the psyche can be acknowledged, understood, and integrated. By facing the full spectrum of the self, including fear, desire, anger, and vulnerability, a person begins to dissolve internal fragmentation, allowing inner and outer life to harmonize. Conscious living requires courage because it demands honesty with oneself in ways that are often uncomfortable. It asks that one step away from societal masks, habitual distractions, and automatic reactions to confront questions such as, who am I beyond expectations? What do I truly value? Where am I resisting my own growth? Each reflection and choice becomes a brushstroke in the painting of the authentic self, revealing patterns and potentials that would otherwise remain hidden. Individuation is also revealed in how a person interacts with the world. Relationships become opportunities for self-recognition rather than projection. Work becomes a medium for expressing personal values rather than merely seeking approval, and daily routines transform from unconscious repetition into intentional acts that support growth and psychological balance. Through conscious engagement with life, one begins to align inner truth with external action, making every small choice a reflection of emerging wholeness. This process is gradual and ongoing. Individuation does not result in perfection, nor does it erase challenges or suffering. Instead, it allows a person to navigate life with self-knowledge, resilience, and purpose. By living consciously, individuals integrate their strengths, weaknesses, desires, and fears into a coherent whole, transforming life itself into a mirror of the evolving self. Ultimately, individuation is not a distant goal but a lived experience. It is expressed in every intentional action, every honest reflection, and every moment of awareness in which one chooses to engage with life authentically. Through conscious living, the inner self becomes visible in the outer world, and the journey toward wholeness manifests not as theory, but as the lived reality of a fully realized human being. True success is rarely measured by external accolades, wealth, or recognition, though society often equates it with these markers. Real success is far subtler, deeper, and more enduring. It is found in the alignment between who you are at your core and the life you live each day. When thoughts, emotions, values, and actions flow in harmony, the individual experiences a profound sense of fulfillment that no external achievement can replicate. This harmony emerges not from imitation or compliance, but from living authentically, in accordance with one's unique inner truth. Living in authenticity requires courage and self-reflection. It means confronting the fears, desires, and vulnerabilities that are often denied or ignored. A person must be willing to question inherited beliefs, societal expectations, and habits formed through unconscious patterns. Without this honest exploration, one risks living a borrowed life, following paths laid out by others, rather than stepping into one's own potential. Even accomplishments attained under such conditions feel hollow, because they are disconnected from the inner self. True success manifests in choices guided by values rather than by fear or social approval. A person begins to act intentionally rather than reactively, to pursue goals that resonate with inner purpose rather than fleeting trends, and to invest energy in relationships, and experiences that nurture authenticity. When decisions are aligned with personal truth, the mind experiences less internal conflict, emotional energy is preserved, and the individual navigates life with clarity and confidence. Authenticity also transforms adversity. Challenges no longer feel like external attacks, but as mirrors reflecting areas that need integration or understanding. Mistakes are no longer sources of shame, but opportunities for insight. By embracing the full spectrum of the self, including imperfections, desires, and shadow aspects, the individual cultivates resilience and psychological coherence. In this context, success is not measured by what one has achieved, but by how fully one lives in accordance with self-knowledge and integrity. Ultimately, living in harmony with the authentic self brings a quiet, enduring satisfaction. It allows a person to experience life deeply and meaningfully, free from the constant pressure to conform or perform. True success is measured in peace, alignment, and the fulfillment that arises when the life you live outwardly mirrors the life you know inwardly. It is not an endpoint, but a continual practice of self-discovery, choice, and integration, the conscious expression of who you were always meant to become. And so, remember this: your lifestyle is not defined by what the world expects from you, but by the truth you are willing to face within yourself. Every morning is an invitation, not simply to repeat yesterday, but to become more conscious than you were before. The life you live daily is shaping the person you will eventually meet in the mirror. Do not fear change, fear unconscious living, because the greatest tragedy is not failure, it is living a life that never truly belonged to you. Choose awareness over distraction, choose growth over comfort, choose authenticity over approval. Step by step, habit by habit, thought by thought, you are creating your destiny, and when your outer life finally reflects your inner truth, you will discover something powerful. Peace is not found, it is created by the way you live. So live consciously, live courageously, and most importantly, live as your true self,